Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into your weekly edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of June 3rd, 2024. Let's get to the headlines. Leading it off, Delaware's governor signed CSF priority Sunday hunting bill into law. That is our lead story. We will be bringing you guests from the first state. Stand by. Wildlife Crossings find support with Wyoming Game and Fish Commission. Great story here. We'll get into more of that from Marie. Trout stream buffer legislation pending before the North Carolina legislature. And finally, incredibly quiet legislative session adjourns in the Show Me State coming from Ken Keene. All that and more, but let's get into it. Fantastic breaking news last Friday. If you saw that out in the socials and you were signed up for our email distro list, you got that news, but we're happy to bring to you now our senior coordinator and frequent flyer on the program, Kaleigh Leager, as well as Representative Jeff Spiegelman, co-chair of the Delaware Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus and looming large leader in that state and helping us execute a lot of top priorities getting things done in Delaware. Rep Spiegelman, welcome, and thank you for making the time this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's weather's really, really nice outside, so you got me trapped inside, but I won't hold it against you.
No, well, we won't hold up much of your time, but again, we appreciate it. Kaleigh, welcome back to the show, and let's just get into it. A lot of good work went into this over the session, and you guys got it over the finish line, and then there was a little purgatory, I guess is a better way to put it. We didn't know if it was going to get all the way, and then last Friday, here we go. Good news all around.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I can obviously, say thank you to Representative Spiegelman and the other caucus co-chairs, as well as a lot of help that we had in the state as far as support. Again, like you mentioned, we weren't 100% certain that it was going to get signed, but Governor Carney came through and put that right into enactment, and we're looking forward to enjoying Sunday hunting in the first state. And again, thank you very much, Representative Spiegelman. Glad to have you on here with us. And what are your thoughts on it? I mean, are you looking forward to getting a field, or are you looking forward to taking advantage of it? And what kind of brought you to this point?
Yeah, and thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your hard work on this too, Kaleigh. And again, big thank you to Governor Carney and Secretary Garvin, actually, for pushing this through. A couple of years ago, we did Sunday hunting of whitetail, which is the most popular species in Delaware, game species. And so this one is, after years of making sure that the earth didn't collapse as a result of Sunday hunting of whitetail, it was about time we moved over to the other popular game species in Delaware, in particular migratory water bird, wild turkey, things like that. This is a big deal. I mean, in order to retain hunters, in order to bring in the next generation, they need to be able to have the opportunities to get into the field and actually do this. It sounds like a very simple thing. It's not. And so we have a lot of competing interests. Obviously, Delaware, very, very small state, second smallest state in the country, 1 million square acres only. There's a lot of competing interests for state resources, for public resources, public land in particular, for private land. So to be able to now have the ability to go out on an extra day of the weekend in order to take bird species is a really, really big deal for people who work, for busy people, and especially for kids who, in the fall, in September during dove season, they've got sports during the weekdays. So it's not like they can get out and take advantage of this, except on Saturdays, where a lot of them have sports to do. And so providing them an extra day, maybe we'll get some more dove hunters out of this, is the hope. Maybe we'll get some more duck hunters, some more goose hunters, turkey hunters, that kind of idea. And we think our wildlife resources can sustain that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the access issue is definitely top two, top two for sure. You've doubled essentially the access for all sporting folks in Delaware, which is huge. And you said as much in your quote and the article that came out. last Friday, and that's showing up yesterday.
Yeah, quick note on that. I mean, while we're doubling, the weekend days, obviously for migratory species, we still have to play nice with the federal government restrictions. And so this bill does not say to the feds, we're going to hunt migratory bird whenever we darn well feel like it. But it does provide Delaware's government another tool in the toolbox to modify seasons to provide maximum opportunity.
That's exactly
What
right.
I love is if the federal government would allow us to take like Wednesdays off or Thursdays off. Instead, so if you want to have the same number of hunting days, remove a Wednesday or a Thursday in order to add more Sundays. But that's a bit above my pay grade.
Sure. And when the issue of Sunday hunting comes up, a lot of people don't, especially with the migratory birds, they don't actually understand that process. So it's an important point to be made that we're not getting extra days of migratory hunting. It's just we're adjusting those in state. And it's nice to be able to have that flexibility.
Right.
The revenue created as well and additional funding for the state agency for putting conservation mission work on the ground has now, it's presumably been, I won't say doubled, but more license sales equals more conservation funding equals more federal match. That's got to be a good thing for Delaware.
Yeah, of course. And in other states, when they legalized pistol caliber rifles, you saw a big uptick in hunters who had given up their licenses, getting their licenses again. New hunters being attracted to it because there's this new implement with this new technology that people rushed out to try. And I got to tell you, I hunt with a pistol caliber rifle instead of my old 12 gauge because my old 12 gauge kicks the living snot out of me.
Yeah.
And the pistol caliber rifle doesn't. So my point in this is that caused an uptick in license sales, significant uptick in license sales. So if we can do the same thing for migratory bird, for wild turkey, for dove, for things like that, if we can get people saying, oh, well, now I can hunt on Sundays, or there are Sundays I can now hunt, that doubles the amount of days I can. Maybe it's worth it to me to get my license. Maybe it's worth it for somebody to get their license for the first time. It certainly couldn't hurt.
Yeah, no, and
There's nobody out there going, oh, well, if I can hunt on Sundays now, I'm definitely not going to get my license.
that's exactly right.
So it's not going to go the other way. So it can only help.
So, a couple species come to mind and thinking about this new axis. You guys have an insane snow goose population, as was on display when we were down. You all hosted us for our NASC summit. An insane amount of snow geese that need to be managed. So here's another another opportunity for people to get out there and manage that migratory species. And then your turkey population as well is being boastful down there. It's not easy to hunt turkey in Delaware because of how your private versus public land situation is set up, where you have to put in for a lottery all the way before February. I think by January, you got to be put in for that lottery to hunt public land as a resident and a non-resident hunter. So now having Sunday open up, especially for your non-resident hunters that come in and spend their dollars as you like to boast about, come on in and spend your dollars and
Delaware, spend money. Tax free.
That's right. Here's more opportunity in the spring, especially.
Yeah. So I mean, look, to your listeners, please come shoot our snow geese, please. Legally, of course. And for the wild turkey is one of these great success stories. This was a species that did not exist in Delaware. They were extinct in Delaware. But then with the efforts of the National Wild Turkey Federation, the local chapters, they brought this bird back to Delaware, and it started to repopulate again to the point where there was a happy, healthy flock. With that happy, healthy flock, they opened up hunting seasons. And every year that hunting season has grown a little bit sustainably, and so now we have to the point now where we can start opening up more opportunities to take wild turkey, which is just an incredible success story for conservation, for wildlife. And now we're starting to actually try to do the same thing with quail, actually. Yeah. But yes, to your point, the idea that you can now get more days to hunt wild turkey, we obviously want that for our hunters. We want that for our residents and non-residents alike, but it also has to be done carefully, sustainably. This is a species that hasn't been hunted in Delaware again all that long. Or I mean, all that long. I mean, it really hasn't been all that long. We don't take 1,000 birds a year, right? And across the whole state. So it still needs to be done carefully. But having the Sundays there available for turkey hunters is a really big next step to, again, making sure that we've got a happy, healthy flock, a sustainable flock, but also providing us the access to our hunting heritage.
Yeah, fantastic. Kaleigh, from the CSF standpoint, speak to the ability to work with a dynamic group of people in Delaware, and then, just the effectiveness of the NASC network, and then the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus there in Delaware on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely, Fred. I mean, I really like to say that Delaware is a shining star. They're a great example of successful collaboration between CSF and the Sportsmen's Caucus and in-state partners. So we have DNREC, the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, their Fish and Wildlife Division. The director there is really great. The secretaries, made this with the governor go through. The legislature passed it unanimously, so we have that on. The legislature obviously takes in consideration the impacts that hunting and fishing and trapping have on the state. So that's great. And having those relationships is very important, as Representative Spiegelman said. Kind of going back to the quail, I was just recently on a field trip with the Sportsmen's Caucus, with the Division of Forestry in Delaware, with some members of DNREC, and we were out to see what conservation dollars are doing in the first state and what that's going to correlate to eventually to hunters. Things that impact the wild turkey also impact any kind of bird species, if it's a game bird or not. So that also includes quail. And so you're getting to see the habitat work that gets done, and how that's going to impact the species itself, and how it's also going to benefit hunters, and where your dollars are going. And so, again, going back to your main point, Fred, having that relationship with the Sportsmen's Caucus, having that relationship with the in-state partners is extremely vital to getting work done no matter what state you're in, especially for sportsmen and women within that state. And, myself being a Maryland resident, I'm not that far from Delaware. Maryland doesn't have Sunday game bird hunting. We do have some opportunities for turkeys in certain counties, but you can guarantee that I will be going over to Delaware to duck hunt on Sundays now within those frameworks of the season, because it's something that we don't have. So, it's a great victory for Delaware. It's a great victory for the Sportsmen's Caucus, sportsmen and women in the state. And I just really want to hound on the fact that having those key relationships, having a very well-functioning oiled machine with the caucuses, with your in-state partners, is extremely vital to getting any kind of work done to protect and promote hunting, fishing, recreational shooting, and trapping. So, again, thank you so much, Representative Spiegelman, all the other members of the Sportsmen's Caucus, Secretary Garvin, Governor Carney, all the people who really worked hard on this. I mean, it's a great victory, and I really look forward to personally taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and actually, to Kaleigh's point, we had instantaneous buy-in. When we started the caucus, I guess next year's our 10th year. We were just looking up the dates. So we're celebrating a 10-year anniversary of the Delaware Sportsmen's Caucus next year. So 9 years ago, we had instantaneous buy-in from Director of Fish and Wildlife, Secretary of Natural Resources, Secretary of Agriculture, Forestry, as well as all the NGOs. We had instantaneous buy-in. And we're not able to do what we do without that buy-in. I mean, our friends on either side of the aisle, House and Senate, and at the executive branch, really saw the benefit of this, and we've been able to accomplish things that I didn't think we would be able to accomplish. I mean, frankly, that we've been able to do. We've been able to lift heavier things than I thought.
Yeah, and
Sunday Hunt is part of that.
And you said you're the second smallest state in the nation, but you guys, you swing like big leaguers. I mean, you guys, lead the way when it comes to your social presence. You guys are constantly meeting as a caucus. And I think it's a great example for the other caucuses throughout the country to emulate. And, we talked about it at NASC. If you weren't at NASC, you should be this year. Delaware did such a great job hosting us on Dewey Beach, and it was just a fantastic time, and getting an opportunity to network with so many people from Delaware and across the country. You'll want to be in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, November 19th through the 22nd this year. But going back to Delaware, I mean, you can tune into their Facebook site, and I'll let the representative plug it here. But every caucus meeting they have is open to the public, and you can see what they're doing and the conversations that are being had and how this whole process works.
Yeah, I've got great staff. Joe Foldrum on my staff is the staffer for the Sportsmen's Caucus, and the other staffers of the other co-chairs certainly help as well. But Joe Foldrum puts everything. We live stream it on Facebook, so we can take live questions at our Sportsmen's Caucus meetings. We always have a couple of members of the public who are asking questions, and this is such a big, complicated thing, this hunting, fishing, trapping thing, that we get questions all the time. One of the great successes of the Sportsmen's Caucus in Delaware has been some of my friends on the other side of the aisle who admittedly know nothing about hunting, fishing, trapping, nothing at all. Don't know, don't want to know, but that doesn't mean they're constituents still.
That's right.
So when I've got representatives from Wilmington, Newark, Newcastle, Bear, things like that, saying, hey, Representative Spiegelman, in an email, can you see the question below from one of my constituents? And can you bring this up to the Sportsmen's Caucus? We're legitimate. I mean, we are a legitimate spokesperson for the General Assembly on issues of hunting, fishing, trapping. And we've been able to navigate issues that way to the benefit of the first state in a way that would not be possible without the Sportsmen's Caucus. We still have a lot to do. I mean, for those of you who really want to have some fun, go look up Delaware's definition of firearm. Which is anything that fires anything is a gun. So we still have a lot to do. And, once we get that out of the way, we'll be able to open up more hunting technologies, for example. We still have to play with the federal government when it comes to fishing regulations, especially on Delaware Bay. But again, this administration has given us really great buy-in from the cabinet departments. We're hoping that continues, and we're fairly certain that it will into whoever is in the new administration come January.
Yeah, and outgoing Governor Sportsman's Caucus member, Governor Carney.
Yeah, and actually, Governor Carney is actually, I admit it fully, is actually a better shot than I am with a shotgun. So whenever the Governor's Cup rolls around, it's a clay pigeon shoot at Owen Station in Delaware every year. The governor's pretty good, actually. Even his staff is actually always surprised at how good he is, and he's a lot better than me. So I'm not sure what that says necessarily. Just throwing it out there.
It's fair. With respect to your time, I want to give you both a couple minutes for parting thoughts. Kaleigh, I'll kick it to you, and then we'll let Representative bring us home.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Just parting thoughts again. Really want to shine the light on how effective the Sportsmen's Caucus is in Delaware. And I know that it's a smaller state, and sometimes that comes with more hurdles or sometimes less. It just depends on your situation. But just the interactiveness of all the members, the people who participate in the caucus meetings. We have local chapters of, non-government organizations. We have local chapters of NWTF that come, members from the public, people from the different departments within the state. The elected officials are there. It's just really, really great to see the piqued interest, the involvement, the engagement, and the passion that everybody has. We're all at the table for the same reason. We're all there to better the first state. We're all there to make opportunity and access more available for people. It's just really great to see the involvement. And I really hope that the listeners here can take away that, the state that they're in, that they really encourage their legislature, their members, their co-chairs, since we're in all 50 states, to really be involved and engage as Delaware is. And so again, just thank you to everyone that's involved. Thank you for the engagement and the passion that you have, because not only does it make my job easier, but it really benefits everybody within the first state and the visitors that come to participate in the outdoor heritage that's there in Delaware.
Sir?
Before I go on, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Wildlife Advisory Council, the Delaware Wildlife Advisory Council, who a lot of times brings this legislation, and this is one that they brought to us. I mean, we didn't bring it to them; they brought it to us. So I'd be very remiss if I didn't mention them. And most often, they send either Stephen Candace or Linda Parkowski to our meetings, and it's been a great relationship with them as well. I would just say, hey, look, come to Delaware, spend money, tax-free shopping. Our beaches are great year round. You can come here. There's always things to do. Let me know, and we'll get you set up. Looking forward to some of the other things that we can accomplish. We're working on a conservation pass uh, for professional guides in Delaware that would make us more competitive with our surrounding states in terms of people who want to come here and take advantage of Delaware's preserves. Again, pistol caliber rifles. I'm sorry. We have some cleanup to do with pistol caliber rifles, air bows, air guns. All of these things are on the table for the Sportsmen's Caucus for next year. And look, we may be able to get it done. We may not, but we're happy what we've been able to do for hunters, anglers, and trappers in the first state.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And certainly opening up more Sunday hunting is a tremendous lift and one worth celebrating for quite some time, and looking forward to implementation in fall 24, 25. So hats off to both of you.
Snow geese. Come kill snow geese.
Snow geese, indeed. That's so many. Guys, thanks so much for your time this morning. I appreciate it, and we will catch up very soon.
Thanks, Fred.
All right. Once again, thank you to Representative Spiegelman and Kaleigh for coming on and celebrating that great win and giving us a little bit more on the additional access to Sunday hunting there in Delaware. That is, again, it's worthy of celebration, and that's such a huge win for that sporting community there in Delaware. So, good stuff. Moving on, Wildlife Crossings find support with the Wyoming Game and Fish Mission, brought to us by Marie Newmiller. Here's our why, or her why. Viewed as the deadliest stretch of highway, Highway 26, the area from Stony Point to the Wind River Reservation is currently a high priority for both the Wyoming Department of Transportation and the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. During the May 21st, 2024 retreat, the Game and Fish Department Commission approved an additional $500,000 in funding for wildlife crossings on Highway 26. Once completed, the project is expected to reduce wildlife vehicle collisions by 80 to 90%, highlighting the role that such crossings can play in Wyoming and in other states susceptible to wildlife vehicle collisions during migratory seasons. That is a huge number and obviously an effective strategy. And I mean, seeing these things out there for years out there in the West, to me, they're awesome. I mean, the ones that go over the highways, the ones that go under the highways, it's pretty cool to see these animals figure it out. Not so many of them that I'm aware of here in the East. And I will say anecdotally, my observations, especially being on running a trap line, is some of the bigger culverts. I put a trail camera on them, and coyote-sized critters and below, as long as there's not water rushing through them, we'll actually use those culverts as means of travel. They'll use them as a path, and obviously critters tend to take the path of least resistance, and if that is available to them, they certainly do use them. But here, the prescribed mechanism to drop those vehicle collisions is huge, and certainly the insurance industry has got to love this and be really high on these strategies. So a little bit more here. Within the project area is the Upper Wind River Valley, which provides beneficial winter habitat for mule deer herds that often cross the highway daily in search of food and water. In addition, bighorn sheep can be seen foraging near Red Creek for food and road salt along the edge of Highway 26 during the winter months. The daily presence of wildlife on this stretch of the highway costs an estimated, rounded up, $800,000 in property damage, accident response, the value of wildlife lost, on an annual basis. On the overall project, will have a steep price tag of nearly $29 million. It will reduce wildlife vehicle collisions by 80-90%. The project is estimated to pay for itself within 3 decades. With the new structure is expected to last for at least 75 years. Funding through grants, state funds, Game and Fish Department, Sportsmen's dollars, and private donations will be utilized to build 3 new underpasses, 1 overpass, and improve the 3 existing underpasses that exist, and fencing repairs. Granting safe passage for the state's migration herds and vehicles that's fantastic. It really is. CSF recognizes the critical need for wildlife crossings to improve habitat connectivity and reduce wildlife vehicle collisions. And CSF has actively supported funding for projects in 11 Western states and has engaged with partners and Wyoming Game and Fish Department to encourage funding for wildlife crossings. We will need to continue working with legislators and partners to expand funding that will maintain wildlife habitat connectivity, protect wildlife populations, and keep motorists safe. Great project. Great. I mean, those numbers, the success, that's fantastic. Good news there. Let's keep the good news train rolling. Head to North Carolina. Trout stream buffer legislation pending before the North Carolina legislature. This is brought to us by Connor Barker. Preventing sedimentation in streams is critical to protecting habitat for trout and other aquatic organisms. Streams with less sedimentation have better water quality, and vegetative buffers provide shade that helps regulate water temperatures for the trout and other cold water species that require cool, well-oxygenated waters to survive. Better fish habitat supports healthier fisheries and in turn provides better experiences for anglers. All right, so a little history here. In April 2023, North Carolina Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus member, Senator Bill Rabin, along with caucus members Senator Buck Newton, Senator Tim Moffitt, Senator Tom McInnes, introduced legislation to protect trout streams in North Carolina. Last year, the Senate Committee on Ag, Energy, and Environment favorably reported Senate Bill 613, and the Senate subsequently passed the bill 47-0. Part of a 2-year session, Senate Bill 613 is still up for consideration, has been assigned to the House Committee on Finance, where it awaits further action. And here's a little bit by the numbers. According to a recent report, trout fishing in North Carolina has an annual economic impact of $1.38 billion with a B, dollars. That's significant. Additionally, trout anglers are among North Carolina's over 1.4 million paid fishing license holders and generate over 28 million in fishing license sales and 13 million in matching federal funds. To support this resource, North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission maintains a cold water stocking program that raises 1 million brook, brown, and rainbow trout annually to be stocked in North streams. So why are these buffers so important? Well, they help conserve riparian areas that are critical components to healthy aquatic ecosystems, in addition to promoting bank stabilization, habitat connectivity, and reducing flood risks. Stream buffer zones significantly reduce erosion and sedimentation. It should be known that trout can only survive in a narrow range of cold water temperatures that are dependent on low sediment rates and abundant shade, both of which are provided by sufficient stream buffers. And the absence of stream buffers, uncontrolled erosion and sedimentation can threaten North Carolina's trout fisheries. 613 would require that new agricultural operations maintain a 25-foot stream buffer zone along the waters classified as trout waters by Environmental Management Commission. The proposed legislation would only impact new ag operations. The exemption for stream buffer requirements for already existing ag lands would remain intact. So, as you're reading through that, and I know as I was, considering that, I was like, oh, well, what are the farmers and then the folks that have operations going to think? And there's your answer. It's already taken care of. Anybody with a new operation, you're starting from scratch, and this is the only thing you know. So as you're starting up your operation, you already know the parameters. You're not having to dial anything back and lose anything. So seems like a reasonable and rational compromise there. And it's good for everybody. And I got to imagine if I'm a farmer, and I got a water body running through. I got a riparian area on my property that is being eroded away and is not being protected. That's eventually going to get to my crop, or it's definitely going to take away my property, my ability to plant. So again, I think probably a good thing all around here. CSF encourages the North Carolina House of Representatives to send Senate Bill 613 to Governor Cooper's desk before the end of the short session. CSF appreciates the leadership of the bill's sponsors and will continue to work with the North Carolina Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus and partners to advocate policies that support trout conservation and angler access in North Carolina. Good work there. Let's get it signed. Lastly, it's a quick week, and it's all good news, which I'm incredibly happy to report. Speaking of incredibly, Kent Keene reports incredibly quiet legislative session adjourns in the Show Me state. Let's see here. Throughout many of the Midwestern states, much of the low-hanging fruit has already been enacted for the benefit of sportsmen and women. However, these successes do not mean that the sporting conservation community should rest on their laurels and must remain vigilant to emergent threats to our time-honored outdoor traditions. CSF remains actively engaged with the highly successful Missouri Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus and in-state partners to ensure that our outdoor heritage remains protected from threats that could undermine opportunities for sportsmen and women. 2024 regular session of Missouri legislature adjourned last week, completing one of the quietest sessions as mentioned. Fortunately, the continued strength and engagement of Missouri Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, thanks largely to the bipartisan leadership, has successfully mitigated threats that are becoming increasingly common in neighboring states throughout the region. Knowledge is power. For sportsmen and women who are engaged in the political process across the nation, knowledge often manifests in the form of understanding the North American model of wildlife conservation and the American system of conservation funding. Quick plug here, while I can, tomorrow's podcast, we get into these two things, especially our American system of conservation funding, when we invite Ben O'Brien, who is just a fantastic individual, great thought process, and well studied on the topic. So anyway, more on that here in the out, but I digress. So the knowledge comes with the understanding of those two systems. This helps folks be able to perform and execute good strategy there in Missouri. Those two enormous concepts, the role of sportsmen and women and the importance of our shared outdoor heritage, truly shines in Missouri. Recently, no state in the Midwest demonstrated the possession of this knowledge better than the Show Me state, thanks largely to the engagement of both leaders and members of the Missouri Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, Missouri Department of Conservation, and the Commission. And key in-state partners, Missouri's most recent legislative session serves as demonstration that knowledge surrounding conservation and the role of sportsmen and women is winning the day. So there you have it. Quick few stories there. Obviously, legislative sessions have winded down or are winding down, and some good news to report. As I mentioned there, tomorrow is a feature podcast publishing week. So we bring to you the thoughts, the sharpened mind of one Ben O'Brien. You may recognize him name from such past productions as Woodside, the Roost podcast, his work with Meat Eater, Yeti, Outdoor Rider Extraordinaire. And really, I'm not trying to oversell Ben. He's just one of the, I find him to be one of the current thought leaders and someone who can articulate the history and making the history of our conservation funding model relevant. And it is. You're going to hear it. He's going to get into it. And he presents in such a way that's just so rational, devoid of most emotion. And I think if you listen to it tomorrow, you're going to come away with something to be able to add to an argument, and not like I dislike you argument, but the argument in so far as you're dealing with someone who doesn't agree with what we do, or, whatever their motivations are. And I think there's some takeaways from Ben that you're going to be able to add to your toolbox and just, copy and paste and put them into an argument and very rationally say, look, here's where we were, here are the stakeholders that were involved. I think it's very enlightening. So anyway, plenty to hear from Ben on that tomorrow. So do tune in. Thank you to the article authors here for their contributions and the hard work across the country here, from caucuses to our SBT members and the whole team. So as we wind down these legislative sessions, look forward to reporting so many wins and so many pieces of legislation that were able to be thwarted, I guess, not advanced through the process, and keeping poor policy away from the community. So with that, as always, thanks so much for bringing us along on your day, sharing this information out there, putting us in your social feeds, subscribing, and rating as often as you possibly can. And we will see you next Wednesday with another report from around the nation. As always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. We will see you all next Wednesday. Tune in for the feature tomorrow. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.